I have two jobs, actually. I'm CEO of CoinLab, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in the course of my talk. And I'm also chairman and executive director of the Bitcoin Foundation, which is the trade organization for Bitcoins. So I want to talk to you about something kind of magical, actually. Bitcoins are magical. And they are magical not in like an evil, Sauron-y kind of way, but more like maybe something like nerdy and sexy. And so I want to explain to you, if you've heard of Bitcoin but don't know what it is or how it works, just a little bit about, just to give you a picture of the magic they bring. So last night I bought dinner, and I'm from the US, and I use a credit card, right? So I was just counting up all of the different companies and networks that had to get involved. So there's a payment processor in the UK. There's probably two banks, right? Mine and theirs. There's some sort of Forex trading company. There's probably a short-term debt instrument for these guys to go. There's going to be settlement at some point. Then we've probably got like US and UK treaties, right? All backing up my swipe, right? And no PIN because America's backwards like that. And Bitcoin does away with that. Oh my God. I asked them to give me a sound that would be good, and I didn't know what it was. That was nice. So Bitcoin does away with that completely, actually, and would let just two people with open source software pay each other over the internet. So it cuts out, disintermediates, cuts through a huge amount of outstanding infrastructure. And you know, I think that's amazing. Maybe another way to say it is that Bitcoin is the first protocol for money over the internet. And a protocol to me is something computers talk, right? So all of a sudden, computers can now send each other money. And that's very interesting. And if we stop for a second and think about protocols in general, there are a few things about them. One is that even if they're not good, they tend to stick around, right? So we send email over a protocol designed in the 60s, I think, simple mail transfer protocol. It's terrible. It's a terrible protocol. But we still use it. Everything's kind of layered on top of it, right? We browse the web over hypertext transport protocol, developed by Tim Berners-Lee, Sir Tim Berners-Lee, since we're in England. And again, people try to increment it, implement it. In the last 20 years, we've gone from 0.9 to 1.1 version of that. Now, when you have a protocol, I mean, protocols are very sticky. Once you've implemented them and talk in them, you want other people to talk in those protocols too. And one interesting thing about a protocol that's money is that it's doubly sticky. You're almost paid to implement this protocol. And that's one of the things I think is so interesting about Bitcoin. And so who's heard of Bitcoin before, out of curiosity? Okay, yeah, most of you. Who owns Bitcoin? Okay, yeah, so that's interesting, right? It's hard to own it. It's hard to get it still. So Bitcoin's kind of in this place in the hype curve where a lot of people have heard about it. Some people own it. Some people are using it. Is it real? Now, depending on if you're a startup person, a CEO, or an institutional banker, this number will hit you differently. In the last 24 hours, about this much US dollar value was spent using Bitcoin. So a little over $1 billion, $1.5 billion USD a year is transacted in Bitcoin right now, today. That doesn't count Forex trades, like exchange trades. That's just actually real value being spent. For something that's just a few years old, has no funding, and is totally peer-to-peer network, I think that's cool. For something that could be how many financial payments are settled around the world, it's just infinitesimal, right? I mean, I know what these numbers mean. I'm trying to think how to introduce it best. One of the things, so if you have something truly disruptive that is going to hit a huge number of people all at once, I would propose to you that you'd see if it's real based, like, if it allows a new business model to come about quickly, like more quickly than it has before, or hits like broad retail scale more quickly. So this is interesting. There's a company in the UK that essentially functions like a retail bank. It lets you, but just with Bitcoins. It lets you store your Bitcoins, send them, spend them, check your balances. It's online. It's got a mobile app. In the last 18 months, this company has sourced 330,000 retail customers. So bankers like Barclays, you guys are in the room, 330,000 retail customers. Now guess how many employees they have to serve that 330,000 customers. No guesses? Three. Less than three. One. There's one man with servers who has a retail consumer bank with 330,000 customers. And they do, by some estimates, 70% of all Bitcoin spends happen through his software, just this one guy, right? So that's pretty incredible, I think. I mean, I think that demonstrates how easy it is to scale in this new environment. But that's not even a very big part of Bitcoin. There are over 45 million Bitcoin addresses that have some value at them. So even he's just a tiny, tiny fraction of this market, which is just, just coming. Now, so why is there so much interest in it? And I think this is going to vary from country to country, but I'll tell you a little bit about what people I talk to think about it as. So one thing is, Bitcoins are a lot more like using cash on the internet than any other way of spending. You can send money anywhere in the world instantly. You have less anonymity than cash, but a lot more than you would have with a credit card, chip and PIN system, PayPal, any of these other large companies. You can opt into systems that have more identity, but you don't have to do that with Bitcoin. And when you think about it, I mean, whenever I swipe my chipless card in the States, I just think about like how much information I'm giving away, right? When you think about putting all this private information, the ability to charge your card out on websites all over the world, I think that really resonates with people. Bitcoin makes some promises. So often people ask, okay, I'm interested, how do I get Bitcoins? What's the story? Bitcoins are issued about every 10 minutes. And the network itself has made a promise to issue less and less over time. So when I started, 50 were issued every 10 minutes. Now it's 25. That will continue to have about every 4 years until there will only be 21 million issued. And so Bitcoin has sort of tapped into this kind of like get in early vibe for people. Now I've made all the wrong moves. I did get in early, but I made all the wrong moves. So my first Bitcoins I sold at 6 cents. I sold 200 of them for $12, and I was like, my computer made money, I'm so happy. And Bitcoins today are about $96 per Bitcoin, so that was terrible. That was very bad. As you'll note, they're also quite volatile. So their Bitcoin prices in the last 4 months have been between 50 and 260 US dollars. So that's one reason some people like them. And if you're a Forex company, CoinLab would love to help you get Bitcoin liquidity onto your platform. So come talk to me, and your traders will love it. It will be great. Another thing people love about it is that it's borderless, right? And if you start thinking about all of the work you need to do, Americans who travel are particularly sensitive to this. Like, I could go to prison for not telling the US if I have a foreign bank account. The US cares an awful lot about this. But really, anywhere you go in the world, there's just so much paperwork, these international treaties that get in the way of moving money around. And Bitcoin is not like that. It's just data put out over the internet. You could send a Bitcoin transaction over your Twitter stream if you wanted. And once the data's out there, the transfer has happened, right? So I always give away money when I talk about Bitcoin. I'm going to talk about just how borderless it is in a second. So one of the ways, a Bitcoin address is like a bank account address. So this middle thing is a Bitcoin address. It's a public address. And some of you in the room could check the balance right now. You know how to do that. Now, what's interesting is public key cryptography gives us, it's sort of like splits that address into two parts. There's the public part you see, and then the private part. And that's the key. That's like the PIN for your Swiss bank account or something. I don't have a Swiss bank account, but a long, long number that controls it. Bitcoin actually lets you use any random string as your PIN. And so in this case, I actually have done something very unusual. I've made a Bitcoin address using this secret up here, which reads, I am an awesome brain wallet, password 212. Now, storing a Bitcoin secret like that is called having a brain wallet. That brain wallet's not in any computer. I've never imported it anywhere. It's just in my head. Now it's in our presentation. But I have put money in there. So I actually put a Bitcoin in there. So it's about 75 quid, $195, something like that. One of you could go take that money right now. And I was thinking the bankers would have their laptops out like immediately, but and I'll teach you how to do that in a second. But anyone in the world who knows that string could go claim that money. They could do it from this room. They could do it from somewhere in Nigeria. Or people are going, no, come on. I will take the money away tonight if no one has taken it out of this account yet. But to give you a hint, you could start at a site like blockchain.info or brainwallet.org, and you could import that private key up there and then send that Bitcoin anywhere you want in the world instantly. I think that's amazing. Like I just gave away some money just with some data, hopefully. I hope one of you takes it. And if not, we'll spend it. There's a pub in London that accepts Bitcoin, so I'll send it there if I don't have it. But this borderless, almost, when we talk about moving money around, this money doesn't move. It doesn't have a location. It doesn't. It's really just data, and that's an incredible disruption that we'll be seeing more and more impact from. So, how should you think about it? If you're a finance institution, long term there are very interesting implications for settlement, just cross-border transactions, other things like that. In the near term, there's clearly huge retail consumer demand for people who want to store their Bitcoins kind of like with a bank, right? There's a ton of retail Forex interest, a ton. So if you're one of those, give us a call. That's what CoinLab does, is we help hook you guys up to this new infrastructure and work on strategy with you. Is anyone from FCA here? Yeah? No, someone did this, but it's not FCA. Okay. Governments are working on understanding this, right? And at the Bitcoin Foundation, we believe that good regulation will help everyone, consumers and Bitcoin businesses. So if you're here, if you work in these groups, EU, UK, wherever you are, come talk to us, come talk to the Bitcoin Foundation. The opportunity to help shape sort of how consumers in your regulatory region work with and think about this is big. And because you don't need a bank or a banking license to write software, I mean, you may need it, but 14-year-olds don't care, 18-year-olds don't care, they just do it. Because of that, there's really kind of this short window where regulatory can come in before consumers have big problems. And we've seen some of this already where literally teenagers start very, very popular money sites, like a retail Forex site. There's one a year ago started by a Chinese 17-year-old that was doing, within a few weeks, maybe 100 million USD of Forex trades every day of his Ruby on Rails site, which was then hacked repeatedly. The software was stolen, the Bitcoins were stolen, and he disappeared, right? And so I think regulatory has a big role to play here. And if you know regulators, tell them to get involved with the foundation. We have people throughout most of Europe, US, a lot of the world ready to come and talk with them. So that's what I would suggest. Any of you could join the foundation, bitcoinfoundation.org. It's cheap. It's like $25 for an individual membership and a couple thousand for the smallest corporate. And the Bitcoin Foundation helps bring together everybody who's interested in the space, and it's where the information about a lot of the innovation in the space is coming. So that's that. And I don't know. Do we have time for questions? I tried to go fast because people always have questions. So, David.
So it's a bit of a cheap trick bribing your audience, isn't it?
Has anyone taken the money yet? Trying. Thank you.
So I have a question, Peter. Governments don't like currencies that are less than fully accountable. And governments like to tax revenue, so they need to know where things are. So what's to stop the US federal authorities, Europe, blocking access to your Bitcoin, or at least stopping you convert it into cash through any established financial institution?
Yeah, I mean, I think the controls we've seen so far have tended to come at the exchange locus, where you're moving money in and out of the national currencies, right? And nothing is stopping them from doing that. They're doing that, and they're getting engaged there. I think if someone told me Israel started to just preemptively tax Bitcoin purchases as a withholding, like 25%. So if you wire to a Bitcoin exchange, they treat it as if you're moving your money offshore out of Israel. And actually, whoever told me that was really mad. But I actually think that's kind of sensible. Bitcoin exists like in the internet. It's a different country almost. So I think we'll see.
But the value, which is a bit speculative at the moment, is partly to do with you can use it for things where you don't want the government to know. It's a very popular currency on the darknet if you go to Silk Road to buy things that you can't get in John Lewis.
I've heard this. I'm not a Silk Road user myself, but I have heard
What's
that.
to stop governments collectively deciding Bitcoin should be worth zero?
Well, I think one thing is that humans don't know how to shut down peer-to-peer networks. So I actually think that's not possible. Like, we don't have technology to stop peer-to-peer communication and interaction. And so I actually think, I hope, and I think generally this has been the case, governments are understanding if you crush all these Bitcoin businesses, the good ones, the ones trying to do a good job, you will just push this far, far underground, right? But peer-to-peer communications are not, they go where they want to go, right? And so I think, I don't think I see a world in which governments can set the price like that. I do see a world where governments...
But they can block access to funds. They can keep those funds outside the mainstream.
Yeah, you could stop exchanges, good exchanges, but it would be hard to stop secret ones, right? Does that make sense what I'm saying? That it's so fast and so easy to use that the right thing to do is to like build the ecosystem, build a good ecosystem. But I don't see. I mean, we just haven't seen any credible threat from that angle where Bitcoin exchanges would be forced. There may be a country that doesn't want to deal with Bitcoins, but their citizens will still be able to use it.
What about the other threat of somebody else coming along with a more popular cryptocurrency?
Yeah.
Bitcoin becomes irrelevant.
Yeah, it could be, and there are hundreds. Bitcoin's an open source protocol and an open source software, so we could have wired coin tomorrow, right? And you could try and get people to use it. And there have been maybe 100. They're called altcoins so far. I do not believe any of them will do what Bitcoin does. But my reasoning for that is just that protocols are very sticky, right? And so like we're seeing this now. There have been a few protocols put out in the last few months where someone has said, someone has basically made a decision. They're like, I want like Bitcoin, but a little different. And then they decide, do I rebuild years of security infrastructure, interest in the currency, exchange technology and infrastructure, some regulatory work? Do I go re-implement all that myself, or do I tap this thing that's already here? And people make the economic decision typically, and they say, oh yeah, I'll do this thing. So.
Last question. You're in the middle of the London financial district. There's a lot of people in the room who are from very big, established financial organizations and banks. Give them one piece of advice. What do they need to do or know about Bitcoin?
They should buy some, definitely. Is that enough advice? I think, when I'm out here saying one man with a server can go generate hundreds of thousands of retail customers, I mean, I think that you should pay attention to that and understand both consumers are interested in this and just, it's hard to get your head around, but consider the disruption that this thing brings and how you guys might fit into that picture. We believe there will be some large new consumer finance brands built around this technology and technologies like this. And CoinLab particularly likes to partner. So I think there are very good bets to be made in this space the next year or two. That's what I would say.
Thank you, Peter. Wired coin to follow.
Yes, I'm excited.